So it is February when I'm filming this, and I'm able to wear short sleeves and shorts, and I'm not even the slightest bit cold. What's up, guys? Hope you're having a great day today. On this really warm day, we're going to be talking about not about my Audi TT, but what I could have bought instead of my Audi TT. When I was searching for another car to replace my BMW Z3, I didn't really tell you guys about many of the other options. I mainly just talked about, oh, hey, I sold my Z3 and I bought a TT. But there's quite a few options that I was considering instead of the Audi TT. So today we're going to go talk about them, but let's get in the car. Let's go somewhere else. Cold start 2016 Audi TT. And so we have found a spot to start filming, I guess. It's right in front of a golf course, but you know what? The Audi at a golf course, something about it just works. But anyways, we're getting off topic. The first car I could have bought instead of my Audi TT is the Toyota 86. I was heavily considering this car because of the fact that, well, for one, I grew up on Japanese cars. A lot of my family had Japanese cars, some of which were Japanese sports cars like the G35, Acura TSX, all of those things. The 86 came to my mind because of the fact that, well, for one, it's a two-door car. I don't really need a four-door car. Secondly, it has the Toyota tech that I'm used to. I mean, I had a Toyota Prius, Toyota Camry when I was growing up. The tech on those two cars are fairly similar to what a Toyota 86 has, so it's a familiar environment in that aspect. Along with that, it's still it's not a fast car. I'm not gonna say it's a fast car, but it's still a decently good car to drive. I mean, the handling on those things are amazing for a reason. Along with that, the modability on those things, it's like a Civic when it comes to modding. It's very easy to mod, and it's a good platform to mod on. But that being said, though, there are the downsides that the car is kind of slow for what you get. It's also quite expensive. The ones I was looking at, there were special editions with similar mileage to my TT, and they were all in the 20s, like in the mid-20s, not even mid-20s, but like the low 20s, if not 20,000 exact. $20,000 got me this thing, but I didn't really see it fit to spend $20,000 on an 86 with outdated tech, and it just did not work well. The Toyota reliability was something I was heavily considering, especially with how unreliable my BMW Z3 was. But at the same time, the Toyotas were having issues with the Boxster engine. And so I was like, the Boxster engine, probably not a good fit for me. And so I decided not to go with that one. The next car that I was interested in was the Porsche Boxster. Again, now, if you remember from my last I could have bought this video where I was talking about what I could have bought instead of my BMW Z3, one of the cars was in fact the Porsche Boxster. I really do like Porsche. I think it's a good car company. The fanboys kind of make it a bit questionable. But I will say though, the 986 and the 987 Boxsters, which is the ones I was looking at because I couldn't afford a 987 Cayman, the Boxster still has all the good traits of the Cayman. And so with that, it did make me think about like, hey, this is still a very good car. It's another convertible, and I told myself, if I get another car, I do not want another soft top convertible. And so that was one of the big reasons as to why I stayed away from that car. But regardless of that, the handling and all that you got was still so good that I was willing to make the exception on that. But at the end of the day though, it would have been a 986, 987, which would be probably early 2000s, if not maybe mid 2000s. And so you still run into some aging problems with that one. And so with that, I was like, probably not, but if I find one, then I'll probably go for it. I also just realized I parked a bit too good for an Audi driver in that, you know, I'm in between the lines. So let's quickly go fix that. Perfect. So the next car that I was considering, and it might be a bit familiar to you guys, would have been the BMW Z4. So I was considering making the switch from the E36, I think E36-7 Z3 to the E85, I want to say. I'm not too sure on the generation numbers, but I think it's either E85 or E89 Z4. It's the one from 2009 to 2015. I would have considered that car because of the fact that, well, for one, it does have BMW's updated transmission. I do love that ZF transmission. It's a great transmission. I've driven it before. A relative of mine has an F30 340i that he's modified, and I love driving it. That transmission just feels so nice. And at one point, I had test driven a salvage 2015 BMW Z4. It was at the BMW dealership where I was living, and I was considering it, not completely, but I was like, this would be, hypothetically, if I had to replace the Z3 at the time, because the Z3 wasn't as broken then, But hypothetically, if I had to replace the Z3, this would be a good replacement. And so I kept that in mind when I started looking to get rid of my Z3, and it was a consideration. I was trying to find that generation of BMW, and I was looking because of the fact that, I mean, I do like the interiors. I'm used to that generation BMW's interiors with the 340i that I mentioned, as well as the M4 that you guys have seen in some videos. But the thing I would have worried about in that case is it just wouldn't have felt same. Like, it wouldn't have felt like my Z3, which, yeah, no, the Audi doesn't either. But you also got to remember, though, is if I'm going from a Z3 to a Z4, I want it to feel like, you know, a Z car. It wouldn't have felt that way because of the fact that the Z4, any generation of Z4, is just much bigger than the Z3. And so with that, it just messes with things completely, and it just does not feel like a BMW Z car in that case. And so I just could not go for it. I mean, I was still looking around quite a bit for a Z car, but I don't know, I just wasn't looking too seriously at those. So the next car that I was looking at, and it's kind of in tune with the Toyota 86 that I was mentioning, was the Toyota MR2 Spyder. The MR2 was still a car that I really liked. That sequential transmission, I know people hate on the sequential, but like, it just feels nice to drive. And it's one of those things where it's not gonna shift for you at all. It's not automatic whatsoever, versus like with the TT and the Z3, they have manual modes, but they'll still shift the gears for you if you mess up somehow or some way. But with the MR2, it's like you're on your own completely. You can redline the engine on that case, which that's a bit concerning, yes, to some people, but it also adds the responsibility when you're driving. And I have to admit, keeping that alertness, it's good for any driver. It doesn't matter if you're a new driver, old driver, anything like that. It's good to have, and I personally wanted it in my car. And so with the MR2 Spyder, I did enjoy the fact that, well, also it was a mid-engine car. I've never had a mid-engine car. I've never driven a mid-engine car. Having one, I feel like, would make things a bit more fun. It would add some great handling, and the MR2 Spyder, it handled great. I know a lot of people hate on that generation of MR2, but personally for me, I really liked it actually. The thing is that MR2s, just like the Boxsters, they're a bit old, they're getting old, they're racking up time, and obviously they have the Toyota reliability and all that, but at the same time though, it's like, the miles are racking up on them, some of them are getting into accidents, so it's really hard to find a good one. And when you find a good one, the issue comes is that they charge an arm and a leg for these things. And so you're like, oh, do I really want to pay that much for a 20-something-year-old Toyota, even if it's a mid-engine sequential transmission? And now you guys might be asking, why don't you get a manual one? Why don't you get a manual one? And that is because I don't know how to drive a stick shift. Also, I plan to take this thing on road trips, take it in traffic, daily drive it. So it's like, do I really want to daily drive something with a clutch every single day through stop and go traffic? And I know a lot of you are going to say, oh, but with the sequential, you still have to manually shift up and down. Maybe not with a clutch, but you still have to shift it yourself. And that's a very good point. But at the same time, though, there's a major difference between, you know, pushing in a clutch pedal, holding the weight on the clutch pedal, versus like pressing a button, you know? So the next car that I was considering, and now we're getting into a bit more of the exciting categories, is the Honda S2000. I like these cars. For one, they retain their value great. Nowadays, you can get a really good condition S2000. I think they're approaching $100,000. So the one I would have probably bought would have been a fairly ratty one. It would have been probably quite old with some miles, maybe some salvage history, maybe one off Facebook Marketplace, maybe one modified. And so that was one of the things that was really turning me away from it. But at the same time though, they handle great. They just look great in my opinion. And it's back to a time where Honda was just really good. I like the clarity nowadays, but the modern Hondas, they just feel too much. They feel too, I guess, hand-holdy. Like, it'll hold your hand, it'll just try and be like, oh, this is the sport mode, it's gonna do this, and it'll give you some excitement, yeah. But it has nothing in comparison to the old Honda, which was like, all right, here's the car. If you do something stupid, that's on you. So, yeah. And I kind of wanted that. But at the same time, though, because of the fact that, you know, it's a rear-wheel drive sports car. I had a rear-wheel drive sports car, the BMW Z3, and so it's like, in that aspect, I was like, I could probably handle an S2000, I could probably do that well. And I know a lot of you are going to say, oh, but in the last point with the MR2, you were talking about how you didn't want to drive a manual every day. And that's one of the things that turned me away from the S2000. But at the same time, though, I was willing to learn because of the fact that the S2000, it's such a raw driving experience. And it's just, I don't know how to feel about it, but it's lovely. I just like the S2000. But at the same time though, $20,000 for a ratty, high mileage, possibly modified S2000 in today's market, it's not worth it. It is so not worth it. But one of the main things that I really was considering with it was because of the fact that S2000s aren't depreciating. They're actually going up in value nowadays, which is crazy to hear, but through everything in the world, the S2000 is holding its value very well. Now, the next car I was considering was actually one of my dream cars. I really do love these cars a lot, and that is the C6 Corvette. I love the C6 Corvette. I was specifically looking for a Le Mans blue on like the beigeish tan color. I really do like those colors. And I mean, the color combo just, it hits differently. The C6 Corvette is one of my American dream cars. Giant big V8 in it. I believe it's a 6-liter V8 or a 6.2 V8, depending on which year you go with in the C6. And I love the sound of it. I just love how they sound. I love how they look. They've aged perfectly. The interiors, they're not the best. I'll admit that. The interiors are actually kind of crap on those cars, but I was so close to getting a Chevy Corvette. Like, I was looking at, I believe it was a 2007 blue on tan Chevy Corvette. I'm gonna keep talking about them, yeah, but let me just show you. So the guy who I was trying to buy this car from, he sent me a video of the car starting up, and it's amazing. It's just amazing. Now you might be wondering, why didn't you buy it? If it's one of your dream cars, why didn't you go buy the Corvette? And the answer to that is, it's a 400 horsepower rear-wheel drive car. That car is dangerous to drive, especially when my only like long-term experience with a car is 130 horsepower BMW. I figured I need another stepping stone. I think that's how it goes. Yeah, stepping stone to go into that before I can go into something a bit more powerful. Now, the TT, it is quite powerful, I'll say that. 220 horsepower is almost doubling what the Z3 had. And so with that, going from this to a Corvette, it makes a bit more sense. And then going from a Z3 to this makes a bit more sense. Versus going from the Z3 to the Corvette, that's an almost 300 horsepower increase, which is, in my opinion, a bit much. Especially for myself, as a 20-year-old who drives, I mean, I drive fairly safe, but sometimes I like to, you know, hear the engine a little bit more. As a 20-year-old who gets that experience with a 400 horsepower rear-wheel drive car, it's only a matter of time before I do something stupid. Let's be honest with ourselves. Along with that, Corvettes, they're actually quite common nowadays. Like the TT and the Z3 where I live, I have only seen one other Audi TT and maybe 2 other BMW Z3s, but I've seen quite a large handful of Corvettes. Obviously, just like the 8.6, it does have quite a bit of modability to it, but at the same time though, it makes it so common as a result. And the thing about me is I like having weird out there cars. Like, I mean, the Z3 is a good example of that, and the TT is a good example of that. Along with the Clarity, I mean, when was the last time you guys saw a Honda Clarity, for the love of God? So having these things, they're rare, people don't see them every day. I just like having that. Versus with a Corvette, yes, it's one of my dream cars, and yes, I want to buy one day, but I like having something a bit more unique. If you think that's weird, I agree with you 100%, but let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. And so the final car, which I was looking at instead of my Audi TT, and it's actually the final 2 cars, is the Audi S3 and the Audi S4. So I really do like Audi's S cars. They just work well. They look nice. I love the virtual cockpit. And I feel like for the sake of YouTube, it would be a lot more interesting to get an Audi S car rather than an Audi A car. Like, I feel like it would be a lot more appealing to talk about my Audi S3 rather than my Audi A3, if that makes sense. And so that brings me to story time, essentially. The story of my Audi TT. So one day, I'm just looking at the Audi dealers' websites, trying to be like, hey, what can I find? Is there anything good? And then I stumble upon, I was originally looking for the S3, S4, and then I find this 2016 Audi TT in this bright yellow with the black accent over there with the little stickers. And I'm like, holy crap, it's a boy racer car, I feel like. And I just immediately, this is during final exam time, by the way. So right after one of my final exams, I just head to the Audi dealer, take a look at this car, and I just love it. I fall in love. And then I go to San Francisco, and after San Francisco, my dad comes to look at the car, and he likes it too. And eventually, well, here she is. The rest is history. I always believe that everything works out for a reason, and I think in this case, looking for an Audi S3 or an Audi S4, it happened for a reason, and as a result, I've ended up with an Audi TT. After everything and all the other cars I've mentioned, I love this one still. Oh man. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Let me know your thoughts about everything I was looking at and the Audi TT in the comments below. And if you like what you're seeing, leave a subscribe. And just like that, I'm out. I probably need to get this thing out of 2 separate parking spaces. Peace.